Chapter 143, The Dreadful Core. After summarizing the military formations to some extent, I headed over to Benimaru's room. My purpose was to show the organization chart that I had just made. While Benimaru had the authority to command, I held the supreme commanding authority and the authority to appoint rights. Although it was complicated, originally he also held supreme commanding authority, but he was relieved of that. In terms of commanding the military, my amateurish self really shouldn't have any say in this kind of matters. So all issues related to commanding the military are left to Benimaru. As mentioned earlier, Benimaru's orders to the army take precedence over mine. However, it was a different story for strategic commands. Those are commands such as appointing generals before the war and making the final judgment during the war. Even if the number appointed was less than the number of the posts available for generals, it arbitrarily falls to Benimaru's jurisdiction without any problems. But the appointment of generals for the corps was left to my discretion. Therefore, I handed the completed organization chart to Benimaru. Seriously, Gauta, a general, as expected, Datta. Certainly, I could agree that giving that idiot the responsibility of many lives was indeed an anxiety-inducing topic, but I knew that for the sake of protecting this country, Gupta secluded himself to do intensive training, and above all, it may not look like it, but the trust I had for my comrades was deep. It's probably all right. I see the natural qualities in him for this. Oh, well, I'll acknowledge it. Shall we give it a try? Benimaru nodded, seemingly convinced. Nothing was said about Gabil. Sure, Gabil got carried away easily, but even so, he had the right character to be a general. He was considerate to his subordinates, and he also knew when to draw the line. While strategic planning was clearly not his strong suit, his tactical judgments were precise. Even if I gave him a troop, there probably wouldn't be any problems. Needless to say, Gerudo was a reliable general. I made arrangements for the reinforcement of the lookout points in each location I had prepared against the Emperor's movement, and then I left Benimaru's room. I should leave the trifling matters to Benimaru. Benimaru is also busy. He's been checking the assembly point for the monster soldiers and makes arrangements with Gerudo about the food distribution and so forth. It won't be good for me to disturb him for a while. How about giving him a hand? I have no idea what you're talking about. Amateur shouldn't interfere. Those are some convenient words. I immediately think so. Now then, my destination after I leave Benimaru's room was Ramirez's workshop. I was going to check on the growth of the cultured golems, magic dolls. I wondered if they had generated souls. Once the golems were complete, if they could take independent action, it could possibly influence the war greatly. There was no need for them to be ready right now, but it was still unknown if they would be ready for the coming war. Even so, just their existence would make a large difference. Their strength was equivalent to 1000 A rank. If they were able to take independent action, their range of usage would expand greatly. Well, even if they couldn't take independent action when used collectively, they could become the strongest corps, surpassing an army. So treating them like a golem corps of destruction that didn't even fear death was possible. In that case, I was considering issuing simple commands to them and using them in a suicide attack. I transferred through the space and instantly arrived in Vildora's large room. I opened the large door in the rear, went inside, and passed through it as usual. Since there was no sign of Vildora in his private quarters, he must have been helping Ramirez again. He was probably conducting another stupid experiment with Ramirez. And as expected, they were conducting stupid experiments inside. It seemed like they were trying to integrate the core I had given them. As always, Bester was recording. Dino seemed to be working together with him, though there was a paper-thin difference between working and playing. He had been spouting nonsense about not wanting to work, but I guess there were things he had worked on without me knowing. In the room, aside from the usual four, like Vildora and Ramirez, there was a guest. It was the Dryad trainee-san. Well, Rimuru-sama, it's really been a while since we last met. Trainee-san greeted me. As usual, she was a translucent bishoujo. Trainee-san, it's been a while. I want to thank you for your cooperation with the dungeon's management. Now, you've given us a place to live inside the dungeon, and as a subordinate of Ramirez-sama, this much is a given. No, it's still true that you've been a great help. Please take care of me in the future as well. I expressed my gratitude. She had certainly been a great help when I asked her to help with the labyrinth's management. By the way, what was she doing here? The answer was, as I expected, a soul didn't dwell inside the cultured golem magic doll, and so I was thinking of various ideas. I could get them all to start activating by linking them to Beretta, but that would be a waste of treasure. And then it struck me. I could place dryads and trines that are close to spiritual life forms in a temporary body like that. In fact, based off The data of the technological information we got from Sarion, it's like possessing a homunculus. That's why we've asked Trainee to conduct the experiment. She informed me. I see. It was hard to move around without possessing a body. It was possible for the Dryads, but there were severe limitations for the Dryads. Dryads were stronger than actual devils since they had a higher position in the upper echelons of A-rank monsters. However, there was the issue of magic leakage due to not having a physical body. And so, when they were apart from the trees, which were their main bodies, they were unable to exhibit their prowess. If they used the cultured golem's magic doll, it would be possible for them to move around freely. This didn't just apply to the Dryads, but for the Trians as well. In addition, the Trians could show off their could show off their strength, which was equivalent to an A rank, and as for the Dryads, they would be able to demonstrate their true power from a distant location. It was a wonderful idea. The experiment was a big success. There was also no problem with compatibility. It seemed that tens of Dryads and hundreds of dozens of Triads would be able to obtain a new body. It seemed the transfer was completed. Trainee San's role was to witness the transfer process during the experiment, and after that, if there was a need to fix the appearance, she seemed to be trying her best to model them after her own figure as much as possible. It seemed that Trainee San was doing all of this on behalf of her sisters. The Dryads had many female types, and the Trians had many male types. Though they shouldn't have any gender, for some reason, the differences in their outward appearance was clearly visible. The Trians didn't seem to pay too much attention to the body's appearance. I'll have to say that the concern mainly originated from the Dryad sisters. If you were talking about Bishojas, it was my turn. I offered my cooperation because I could alter their appearance to some extent. In the first place, it was going to be difficult to change the outward appearance without altering the skeletal structure, as there seems to be a dozens of sisters. I remodeled and shaped the skeletal structure for each of the sisters while they conveyed their desired figures to me through the thought link. Afterwards, I adjusted the flow of magic power and finished arranging the quantity of muscles. It was perfect. As an extra service, I refined the skeleton with gold and made it possible for it to change into orichalcum. With this, it would be possible to adjust it to some extent in accordance to the owner's will later. In this world, gold was a versatile metal, thus it had a very great affinity and adaptability to magical power as well. Though I couldn't use it en masse because it was a rare metal, it was fine to mix it with magic still. Thank you very much, Rimuru-sama. In response to Trainee-san's thanks, I replied with shaking and wobbling. This much was nothing. It was also a thank for her usual aid. Then I'll leave the rest to you guys. Ramirez, please inform me if it seems a soul will dwell in the golems. Roger, I'll immediately come flying and inform you. After I asked her to inform me if a soul successfully formed, I returned to my office. There was still some work left to do. I wanted to help with the research there forever, but I didn't have the liberty to do so. While the desire remained in my heart, I returned to my room. Next scene, the demon was unruly. It was trampling the demonic territory. In the underworld, or as it was sometimes called, hell, in the spiritual world, it defeated strong demons, just like the incarnation of violence. The powerless ones had long fled, and those with strength had banded together to fight it head on. But for that demon, the grief of the weak and worthless could not be heard. That demon completely destroyed its opponents and continued to trample them calmly. Demons were a spiritual life form. Therefore, even if their bodies were destroyed, they would revive themselves through self-generation over time. Maybe knowing this, that demon didn't restrain itself and did not give mercy to those who came. That demon was the avatar of dreadful violence. Kufufufu, there was no chance for my defeat, even if all of you small fries gather like this. That reminds me, a long time ago there were several people who rivaled me. Shall I give them a visit? Leaving behind those mysterious words, the red-haired demon teleported from its position and vanished. What remained were the remains of demons. Speechless. Wait. Next scene, I returned to my room and checked the construction of the surveillance system. Intelligence agents were placed in important points of the Great Jura Forest, from the sea coast to atop of the mountains, but even to that extent, an ease still remains concerning about the information gathering, or rather it was expected that it didn't function well when the actual fight began, and so I thought about whether it would be possible to use magic to monitor. Magic of Distance View series with purpose of observing was present in the Hex series. However, the usability of it was poorer than I thought. It was only to the extent where I can track my target's appearance. It was inflexible and it could only monitor from one position. To view from a different position, the magic must be invoked once more. It's impossible to view the Top Gun's like as demon lords, since it would repel by the magic barrier we always erected, and so using the existing magic didn't go well. However, I had an idea. For example, the physics magic, Megiddo, God's Wrath. It was magic that collected sunlight using floating droplets of water to converge it. I could make the droplets of water float at various locations to transcribe the local situation and copy it. Alternatively, I could copy the image from a high altitude, then magnify the image and project it onto the monitor. That meant I was creating a surveillance satellite with magic. According to Raphael's answer, this could be possible with the utilization of physics magic, spirit magic, and spatial manipulation. Afterwards, I made a detailed request and made arrangements for it with Raphael. Once the surveillance system was completed, collecting information would be simple. The amount of information I could collect would be enormous, and grasping the movements of the enemy's armies could be done easily. During the Battle of Tsushima, Sea of Japan's naval battle, the Russian Baltic Fleet was destroyed by the Imperial Japanese Navy under the command of the Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, Heihachiro Togo. The most crucial aspect of this was naval battle was whether you could encounter your enemy or not. To predict the point where the encounter was going to happen, if that had failed, Japan would have lost because the battle would have never occurred. In other words, I could say it was quite similar to our current situation, since I dispersed our forces to various places and calculated the expected inferiority in the number of our forces. Defeat was the most probable outcome. Grasping the Empire's movements and focusing our forces accordingly would be the decisive factor for victory. If the Empire dispersed their forces using timely calculation, it would become possible for us to defeat them individually. In order to turn the tides of battle in our favor and to ultimately grasp victory, the completion of this magic was crucial. So although the magic was already completed, I wanted to improve it, demanding Raphael's son to make this spell easy to use in a small place. I made a complaint like that. Can't I do it by myself? Don't be foolish. Wisdom King Raphael was my ability. In other words, I could say I have been doing my best. I might have been slightly overworked lately. After I take a bit of a breather, let's use the finished surveillance magic. Thinking that, I requested the maid who was on standby in the adjacent room to prepare some tea. Shuna would usually do it if she didn't have any errands, but when she was unavailable, it would be this maid instead. It was more than satisfactory, though the maid was a former goblin who had evolved into Gobrina. Her appearance was hardly any different from a human's. Recently, light makeup had become a trend, and they seemed to have become increasingly prettier. She came carrying the prepared tea, and then after serving the tea, she vowed, Diablo-sama seems to have returned. He requested an audience. What should I tell him? So she asked me. I asked her to tell him to come here. The maid bowed to me once and then left my presence. Apparently, she was still tense around me. Her movement was stiff. If it was Diablo or the other executives, they should be able to enter without reservation, but the surroundings prevented that. If that was the only problem, Diablo came in while smiling. I didn't know what he was going to say, but I could see wickedness in Diablo's smile. Me aside, I think that for other people it would be a symbol of misfortune. It seemed like he was doing something really evil, but this was because was clad in an evil atmosphere. Rimuru-sama, I have just returned. I have brought people who would like to have an audience with Rimuru-sama today. By all means, if it is possible for you to meet them, nothing would bring them greater joy. As usual, Diablo came to greet me in a reverential manner. This fellow decided that I was his only master, and he served me like I was a god. In any case, the prodigies, or something like that he had said he was going to gather earlier might be those people. Were there people who satisfied you? Yes, though it was only about 10 people. I'm very sorry. I'm really ashamed by my own incompetence since I'm unable to prepare the core. No, don't worry about it. Anyways, let's meet them. Oh, thank you very much. Well, then I have kept them waiting. Did he seriously plan on making a core? He was a terrifying demon. I walked behind Diablo while stealthily thinking about such things. I wondered how far he was going to go. It seemed to be outside of Tempest. Though it is possible for them to pass through the barrier, it would be a problem if the barrier accidentally broken. So Diablo apologized. But what the heck are the people you're bringing along? Using Leon's country as a reference, I had installed a mechanism that created a large barrier. Thanks to this, the city was continuously covered by a defensive barrier that could differentiate between enemies and allies and spread around the circumference of the city. As for a big shot that could break it, that was only possible by a monster of disaster class beyond A rank. In addition, if it was going to be broken soon, it would immediately be handled by the sentry. Non-intelligent A rank monsters and the like are already no longer a match for our country soldiers who have high skill. But even among the devils, only high-ranking ones could destroy the barrier. This was because there was a large difference between passing through and destroying it. Seriously, what the heck are the fellows you brought along? Were they really devil class? I allow you all to show yourselves. Manifest. Diablo issued an order. When we stopped, 10 demons appeared. Hey, aren't three of them archdemons? Even with high rank demon summoning, to summon archdemon was nearly an impossible task. Anyway, one of them had the strength of a strategic class. It was on the degree of whether preparing a big compensation and summoning them in the first time was possible or not. If humans were to attempt to summon them, they needed a large-scale ritual on a national scale to do it, and there were three of them. That reminded me, Diablo was also originally an archdemon. They might have been his acquaintances or something like that at that time. The other seven were greater demons, but they seemed to be special individuals. They had the dignified presence of great demon. These people were once my comrades, because they cried and swore that they wanted to be useful to Rimuro-sama. By all means, I thought to allow them to accompany me. Diablo explained while smiling. However, the part about them crying might be true, but the part about them wanting to be useful to me was questionable. After all, they still had traces of beating they still had traces of being beat up. They seemed like wanted to say something, but they didn't utter a word. It seemed like they had been given strict, detailed instructions by Diablo. We are the faithful servants of the demon lord Rimuru. We await your instructions. The demons bowed their heads simultaneously and swore their allegiance to me. Diablo nodded. He seemed satisfied as he watched at the spectacle. Truly, I was glad he was an ally. What a terrifying fellow. Well then, we had 10 new companions, but because they are demons, spiritual life forms that is, magic power was needed to manifest their physical bodies. I see, they were specially made to wait in the outside for this. Then suddenly I recalled the thing that Trainee-san had said a while ago. It should be okay for me to make them dwell inside the cultured columns, right? So I thought, let's implement that immediately. First of all, I prey on the demons with Gluttonous King, Beelzebub, and I stored them in my stomach. With Diablo, I transferred to Ramirez's workshop. I explained the circumstances to Ramirez, and we let them dwell inside each golem in the capsules. The result of their embodiment was a big success. The demons drifted like they were asleep inside the magic water. When they awakened, the embodiment would grant them a complete body. They might be useful then. Oh yeah, it would be inconvenient if I didn't give them names. Thinking that, I decided to give them names. Because it was unpleasant when a large amount of magic power was consumed, I needed to be careful. I looked at the amount and set a limit of once a day. First of all, it was for Diablo's pride bodies, the three archdemons. Each one of them was going to receive two greater demons as their respective aids. One of them was a unique stray. It seemed he picked a fight with Diablo and was incidentally crushed by him. That was the highlight of the people Diablo brought. Anyway, let's give them names. Testa Rosa, Ultima, Carrera. Those were the names of the three archdemons. While I was giving them names, their embodiments and evolutions were completed in an instant, and then demon dukes emerged from the culture capsules. Among the three of them, there was a beautiful female type. When I first named it Testarossa, I was surprised since its evolution and birth immediately occurred before my very eyes. But as expected, I got used to it. Their ability was tremendously overwhelming, and the dimensions of their strength went beyond common sense. Is this for real? Aren't they more powerful than the former demon lords? Moaned Dino. But Vildora and Ramirez were not shaken. It might because of this, right? If it's Rimuru, it's natural, right? I warded off such a feeling lightly. Bester, who was in the corner, was muttering, I don't see anything. Ha ha. I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm unrelated. While he repeated such incoherent, grief-inducing muttering, he was rubbing his head. I decided that I never saw that. Next were the greater demons, Venom, Veyron, Moss, Cian, Zonda, Agera, Esprit. I named them respectively. These guys also instantly finished their evolutions and emerged from the culture capsules as powerful archdemons. I felt I had acquired an unbelievable war force, but this was still just the beginning. Rimuru-sama, they couldn't endure the joy of you granting them wonderful names and power. Please, by all means, permit me to pledge my loyalty to you later. There is a request. The souls of the people who were the subordinates of this one. If you can allow it, please let us use these dolls. I didn't know how many dolls he needed, but I decided to allow him to do it. It seemed just perfect to let the souls of the lesser demons, low-ranked demon, dwell inside the cultured golems, though it was likely that they would become greater demons with their ability. Even so, there was no problem, because I had consumed a large amount of magic power. To go further and give them names seemed impossible. Even so, there was no issue. Dozens of greater demons with abilities beyond A rank. If it was a unique individual who was stronger than the average of weaker demons, it might be born as a stronger archdemon than the others. I gave him permission while thinking that the greater demons seemed to have 100 subordinates each. There were a total of 700 souls of lesser demons dwelling inside the cultured golems. If this follows gains physical bodies and emerged, it would only serve to increase their dreadful force. No, normally, Even with only 10 demons, I may have done it again. Let's feign ignorance. It's all Diablo's responsibility. I was irresponsibly sitting next to Bester and thought of such a thing. After this, the demons that were born were here manifested as greater demons, terrifying greater demons with abilities stronger than the devil's. My prediction was correct. The archdemons that were just born were stronger than the summoned ones. It had become an unimaginable curve. Black numbers, black core, 700 people. The group called themselves a core, even though their numbers was the lowest. They were the strongest unit in the Tempest, the symbol of terror. When the other demons emerged from the culture capsule, that time is the moment of the birth of the black numbers, black core. End of chapter 143. Intermission Venom story. I don't remember my own name, but what I do remember could be called the memory of my previous life. It seemed to be the faint memory of when I was a human. Apparently, I seemed to have been an orphan. I went to a place called school regularly and was foolish. Before I noticed, I was reduced to a fool who ruled over other people through violence. As a result, I was stabbed to death by an opponent in a dispute. By a common story, I think it was an appropriate end for me. And so my life ended. I didn't know if it exists or not, but I was going to be to the afterlife, or I should have. When I woke up, I was drifting in a place I didn't really know. It was a world of full darkness, but strangely enough, things could be seen clearly. I didn't feel hunger, and there was no such thing as pain and suffering. I was merely a drifting existence. When I looked at my surroundings, I sensed similar drifting existences like me. I wondered if those fellows had similar memories. I didn't mind anything about my previous life and just drifted for a long time without doing anything. In order to distract myself from boredom, I focused my consciousness into the drifting existence that was similar to me. From the bottom of my body, I could feel a power gushing forth. I seemed to be exist as a mass of energy, as in this darkness full of saturated energy, energy that overflowed from my body might not leak out. How could I explain it? So that it's easy to understand. I couldn't explain it well because I didn't have the knowledge, but it was like crystallized sugar inside of sugared water. I think that our existences were like that. I was able to understand the usage of that energy unconsciously. I could move in the direction I turned my focus on without any sound. I called out to the other consciousness. However, there was no response. The other party didn't have a something that could be called a consciousness. It seemed to be a lump of power that merely existed. It broke and scattered when I hit it because it was uninteresting. It was a bit interesting. I remember having thought that after that, for quite a while, I spent my daily life searching for the drifting existences similar to me and destroyed them one by one. The spectacle was clear to see if it was daytime, despite the fact that light didn't shine inside the darkness. I got used to such a world, besides there was nothing else I could do, and so I kept doing that same thing every day. Then a change came upon such a life. I met the strange fellow. Yo, brother, don't be so rough. Rampaging too much is boring too, you know. That fellow was different from the fellows without will. He could speak in words. I was surprised and stared at that fellow without saying anything. Words, well, they weren't actually words. It could be understood to be telepathy, thought communication. However, I didn't even know that there was a person with will at that time. It couldn't be helped that I was surprised. Hey, what's with the surprised face? Were you worked were you worked too hard by an unpleasant guy in the surface? If it was a disgusting summoner, it's okay to beat him to death, you know, or else was the opponent too strong? If so, it can't be helped. Just give up. Saying such things, the fellow giggled. A cheerful fellow. After that, I learned various things from that fellow. This world was the underworld. In other words, this world could also be called hell. It was the spiritual world, the home of demons that didn't possess a physical body. I was inside such world. I seemed to be a lesser demon. Demons are an existence like spirits or angels. It seemed to be an existence that receives from the spirit of darkness, and specialized in the demonic attribute. Similarly, the angel specialized in the holy attribute of the spirit of light. The exception to this seemed to be called a spirit. To me, it was an unimportant story. We didn't have personal names. There seemed to be few people with names, even amongst the high rank existences. However, I wasn't troubled because I could understand whether my consciousness was suited for it or not, but because there was no name, there seemed to be little attachment towards oneself. There were some exceptions. If we were summoned several times to the surface, we could become an existence that possessed an ego after having contact with the world. Summoning. It means to be summoned to the material world from the spiritual world. By obtaining a temporary body, the pleasures of the surface could be tasted. That is smell, touch, and taste. I could collect enough information to control the world. A summoned demon without an ego seems to be affected by the personality of the summoning master. Various kind of information is received from the summoner's side. According to the contents of the request, it seemed that I could obtain a lump of information called soul. We could evolve into higher beings if we collected a lot of souls. Summoning is choosing one appropriate amongst many demons. The place was close by, and a demon with the appropriate rank for the quest seems to be chosen naturally. It seems we obtain considerable information once we are summoned. First of all, an ego arises, and we can get great power by being summoned many times. That demon came and said to me, Hehehe, I've been summoned thrice, you know. How many times have you been summoned, brother? I didn't know what was funny, but I heard it laugh frivolously. Somehow, I was very angry. I hit that fellow. Brother, what are you doing? That fellow hit me back in anger, and after that, we fought continuously and exchanged blows for a few days. Well, rather than hitting each other with our fist, we were throwing energy at each other and making the other party accumulate damage. In my mind, hitting is an appropriate expression. In the end, there was no conclusion. However, yo, brother, you are strong. I will call you Aniki from today. Because that fellow understood, the fight ended. Well, rather than a fight, it was my one-sided burst of anger. I wanted to go to the surface too. At that time, I felt the desire increase intensely. From that moment, the two of us became like brothers, and every day we kept picking fights with the other people. A mindless demon is uninteresting. Our targets were those that had egos and had experienced being summoned to the surface multiple times. Every day we did nothing but fight, battling, but there didn't seem to be someone as unusual as me. There were also some who had come from far away to pick a fight with me, and before I realized it, my companions had reached 100, and this area of the world became my turf. Without becoming aware of it, I had evolved into a greater demon. I noticed this when I instantly killed my opponent in a fight. I felt that a great power different from the one I had before ran throughout my entire body. I'm invincible, so I got too cocky that time. I, who had evolved, acquired a unique skill integrator in conjunction with its progenitor that I had since my birth, the unique skill divider. It was a skill with great utility. Even when I hit something, it broke into pieces. This seemed to be the result of the power of division. I felt that perhaps this ability was produced due to the trauma of being pierced and cut down in my previous life. Well, it was an insignificant issue. If the opponent was not my equal, then they could not oppose my power. Besides, it was easy to increase the number of underlings since it was possible for me to assimilate the opponent and then divide them. It couldn't be helped that I get cocky, right? And then that guy appeared. Since being in this world, I felt fear for the first time. The existence of a genuinely strong being was carved into my soul, a demon with red hair. He appeared before us and easily swept us away like we were just insects. My followers and I were exterminated. Fumu, there's no resistance, boring. Along with fear, I felt hatred gushing forth from the depths of my heart. My subordinates, my companions were, amidst the anger and ability awakened inside me, confirmed. Acquisition of unique skill, regenerator, succeeded. Further than division and integration, I experienced my astral body, spirit body regenerating in an instant. I looked down at that red-haired demon and huh? with full, with a flood of emotions, with Okay. Oh, do you still alive? Wave of division that I fired was quickly dispersed, and my astral body was crushed into pieces. Our statuses were too different. After that, I regenerated once again, and I swore revenge. I continued to chase him many times and challenged that demon for a rematch. Kufu. Interesting. You're still a person with backbone, huh? Good. My name is Diablo. By the name granted by a great master, I will show you a little of my seriousness. End of world collapse. At that time, I had certainly experienced the end of the world. Originally, the likes like me has an unneeded thing. What? Why red hair? Diablo has black hair. I thought it was guy. Okay, going back. Originally, the likes like me was an unneeded thing. I was able to understand that there was no need to use it. The status was too different, but I'm not regretting it. I felt a feeling of satisfaction that I had not felt until now, together with death, but I never met with him. When I manifested in the surface world for the first time, I was summoned by that person, Diablo, and in front of me was a monster. If you compared it to the knowledge from the previous life, such a tiny being should be called a slime. However, towards that slime, Diablo-sama, who should be an absolute existence, kneeled. The reason was simple. Even the foolish eye could understand that slime was in a different dimension. You could agree with why Diablo praised it as God every day. It wasn't an exaggeration. It was the unvarnished truth. Like me, the people who received baptism from Diablo-sama kneeled identically. I understood that there was a person who was overwhelming superior to me, but I didn't mind this treatment. Before Diablo-sama were people that weren't any different from me. I could agree that it was natural. These people were once my comrades because they cried and swore that they wanted to be useful to Rimuru-sama by all means. I thought to allow them to accompany me. Diablo-sama's voice resounded in the distance. This person for sure will become our true master. And so simultaneously, we are the faithful servants of the Demon Lord Rimuru. We await your instructions. We pledge our loyalty to the Demon Lord God in front of us, and I even gained great power. Your name is Venom. Well, please work hard. Rimuru-sama spoke to me and amiably. in a carefree one, and so I obtained it a new name. My name is Venom, the demon who pledged his loyalty to Rimuru-sama. I had achieved evolution and received a physical body in this world, a new body, and also a new power. I became an archdemon, superior demon general. I had evolved into existence with a different class. However, I realized one fact. Even after obtaining this much power, the current me had yet to reach the feet of Diablo-sama. But I could still grow stronger. In the capsule in the rear, my former companions were asleep in their newly obtained bodies, people who would become my subordinates. I would lead a unit under Diablo-sama's direct control. A female-type demon with scarlet hair, named Testarossa, was appointed as Diablo-sama's right hand. She, who was originally powerful, saw her power increase just like I had. The present me did not match her, but there was no need for me to be impatient. I could still grow stronger, and then someday I'll become Diablo-sama's right hand and offer this world to Rimuru-sama. My name is Venom, a man who will someday stand next to Diablo-sama. After that, Venom greatly increased in power and was feared as a demon that exhausted and massacred hostile enemies. End of chapter. End of the intermission story.